Welcome to PsychicBent. My name is Carrie.
And I'm Kim. We are two sisters wanting to help other psychics learn and grow in their abilities and to help educate about spirits, angels, and everything psychic. Welcome back, listeners, to PsychicBent. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to be continuing our Healer series, and this episode will be about crystal healing and how you can become a practitioner in that area of the healing modality. This is going to be Carrie's episode to lead because, as we all know, crystals are her thing, and I wouldn't think about trying to take that over myself. So, Carrie, why don't you go ahead and cover what you discovered about crystal therapy or crystal healing?
Crystal healing. Now, you could do crystal healing. It doesn't have to be mine.
No, I meant the topic itself.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I don't care. Well, crystal healing, we're going to go over some of the basics of crystal healing. And, the crystal healing is thousands of years old. It's not a new thing. It's been around for a very long time. And it is an age-old practice where the stones or crystals can actually be used to boost your physical emotion, spiritual health. And, and a lot of things that we do as empaths and psychics, we do need to do a lot of things to help with our spiritual health. Whether this modality, reaches out to you or not, you do need to constantly clear your aura and, try to heal your chakras, like we talked about in the chakra episode. This is, ancient Asia ideas like the Chinese life energy and the Hindu and Buddhist chakras. They're all based on basically your energy field, which crystals can help soothe or boost your energy field, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, there's different types of healing crystals, and we're not going to get into listing all the different types of crystals. We kind of did that on the crystal episode we did.
Yeah, right. And there's so much reference out there.
There is.
Reference material out there that you can go really research the crystals and their properties and such. So yeah, I agree. We don't have to deep dive there.
The concept of crystal healing is that the crystals work through vibration and how everything has a vibration. Whether it's food can have a vibration, we have vibrations. Raising our vibration is what helps us communicate better with spirit and get more in tune with our guides. And stones have vibrations. If you've ever walked up to a certain place and got that vibe, that's like, oh my gosh, I don't like this place. I don't know why. That's the vibration.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm.
So basically, it's the frequencies of the crystals that sync up with your energy, and how that works with you. You hold a crystal, you imagine the energy and getting in tune with this crystal, and it should help you feel more balanced and better. That's pretty much the concept. Now, there's different kinds of crystal healing. We're just going to touch on a little bit of that. But the main thing is how this works, because I've heard a lot of people make fun of crystal healing.
Yeah.
Oh, just throw the rock and hit him on the head, and that's how you get rid of negativity. And I was like, yeah,
well,
that's tempting.
That does help sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it does. It's very tempting. But learning to know how it works, is really what's important. And there are lots of healing crystal courses out there that you can take. It's again finding the one that resonates with you. Mm-hmm. Resonates with what your belief system is.
Right.
But it's just the basics here are the crystals can create an energy field. You just got to pick the right crystal for what you're looking for, what you're wanting to achieve. Mm-hmm. Let's just say like amethyst. Amethyst, its properties, gut health and calming, uses you place on your third eye chakra. That's just a sampling of, I could go through the list, but we're not going to because I don't want to put you to sleep. But it's kind of finding what stone matches your own energy or vibe. Just because, amethyst can help with your third eye chakra, well, there's other stones that could do that as well, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
And so you might not be drawn to amethyst because maybe you don't need the third eye chakra being worked on. You might be drawn more towards obsidian, which helps process experiences and emotions. So a lot of times we get in our mind, oh, this is what I need to work on because I'm not getting my hits like I feel like I should. So I'm going to grab this stone and I'm going to get this stone to work with me. And it's not helping you because that's not the problem. So you need to research stones and go with where your gut's telling you to go or your instinct is telling you to go. Which stone do I need? I've had that happen so many times where, they Google's a thing, we all do it, where they've Googled stones and have decided based on what Google told them is the stone that they need. And I've had them come up, to approach my table when I'm at a show looking for a specific stone. And it's whether or not I have the stone, it turns into something different. And at the last show Kim was at with me was at the paranormal convention. And Kim saw how that worked, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It was really interesting.
The thing when selecting a stone, it's better if you could do it in person, just because you can then feel the energy that stone has. Mm-hmm. I always have selenite on my table. So, I'll put the stone on the selenite and then I have them pick the stone up to see if the stone resonates with them. Now, the basis of stone selection, how I use it is you take your less dominant hand, and that's the hand that you pick the stone up with.
And remind our listeners as to why you do that, because I know we've talked about it before, but remind them, why do you choose the left hand to pick it up?
Oh, it's your left hand if that's your non-dominant. If you're left-handed, you use the right hand.
Okay.
So whichever, it's the opposite. That's the stone, that's the hand that's going to be more in tuned to picking up the energy of the stone.
Okay. So
I don't know where you were. I wasn't sure where you're going with that.
Why is it the less dominant and not the dominant hand? Is what I'm trying to. Why is the dominant one not used for that purpose? Is it because that's your brain then picking it up?
Yeah.
Or
it's just the right. Your dominant hand is not as sensitive to your non-dominant hand, correct? Because when you're right-handed, you use your right hand to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
The left hand's just there to help hold the jar while you're trying to open it or whatever. So your left hand is going to be more. It's not as toughened, I guess.
Not as calloused, not as
right, not as not as tough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
gotcha.
So that hand's going to be more sensitive. Because obviously it doesn't get used much because it's your less dominant hand, unless you're ambidextrous, and then it's the hand you use the least.
Right, gotcha.
Yeah. Now, what I recommend is pick up the stone you're drawn to, put it in your hand. If you're very, very sensitive, you might need to take a step away from the table to not confuse the energy that's already on the table happening. Mm-hmm. And just, choose it that way. If you feel nothing, that is not your stone, and you can put it down and, try to go to the next stone. And, your hand might tingle. You might just feel some energy. You might just feel like, oh, this is vibrating, feels like it's actually vibrating in your hand. It comes across differently for different people. I think a lot of times it's how much that person actually believes the stone's going to help them on whether or how that stone's going to react.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I was at the paranormal convention where a person came up looking at the stones and the pendulums all started moving. Remember that, Kim?
Yes.
They all start. Yeah. And the minute she walked up, they was almost like, going, look at me, look at me. I mean, they were swinging. All of them were swinging. And she ended up getting a pendulum because she needed one of those pendulums. But they were actually in tune to her. They were like, oh, hey, here we are. And it was something to see, wasn't it?
It was.
I'm like, I think you need a pendulum. I don't know which one of these crystals you need, but you need one of them.
Yep. That was something.
Yeah. So it's how it's going through a process, on how you choose certain crystals. And you need to, before you start handling them, set the intention. What do you want this stone to do for you? Or give me the stone I need. And then you start looking. I was talking to two ladies that walked up to the table, and the one gal was really into stones, the other one not so much. And I kept looking at the one that's not so much, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this stone is really talking to her. This stone really. And I said, could you pick up that stone? And she picked it up, and she goes, oh my gosh, is it supposed to be vibrating like this? And I'm like, only if it's yours, honey. But she wasn't a believer in crystal healing. She just thought they were pretty, and that's fine. It's if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. But I mean, the stones actually do have an energy presence, and they do have a vibration. Another way you can go about picking your crystal is think about what you need. Is it protection, clarity, healing? Get a clear idea of what you want the stone to do for you. You need to know what you want. Do your homework. You don't need to necessarily go to the rock shop and say, hey, pick me out a stone for this. Because crystals are all crystals have quartz in them, whether it's tiger's eye is in the quartz family, amethyst is in the quartz family, so they all have quartz as part of their makeup. So, you got to kind of do your homework to see what the different crystals are and their properties. So like if you need mental clarity, you might want a yellow topaz. But what if yellow topaz isn't in the budget for you or not available at the local gem store or rock store? So that's where you need to look for different crystals and different properties as well. And you go with your gut. What you're drawn to is probably what you should be getting at, looking and holding. Look at a few pictures or look at a few stones in a shop and go with what your gut is telling you. I like people to, like if they come to, I'm not telling them each stone and what the properties are. I'm making them go to where they're drawn to, because that gut is what's telling you what you need.
Right.
And you can also pick out what, like we talked about in the chakra episode, you could pick out one that matches the chakra you want to balance. Those are the top 4 for picking out crystals. Now, number 5, I think is really important because quality does matter in a stone. And meaning you want it ethically sourced. Because if it's not ethically sourced, guess what vibration goes with that stone?
Well, the negative, because of how the people are treated that are digging that crystal out of the ground. If they're
Right.
being mistreated, they're poor, they're whatever, they're how they are feeling when they're digging that up, but that all gets in there.
Oh yeah, and it's really important, to feel that stone, be in tune to that stone, because I mean, I don't know if this ever happened to you, Kim, but I've walked up to like a buffet and walk up to some of the meat and my stomach gets turned because it's the energy off that meat.
I don't know. I don't think I can relate to that. I don't think I've ever had that experience.
Good, because you don't really want that experience. Because it's kind of like, it's in tune to the fact that that animal probably was not perhaps harvested in a manner that was ethical. It's just sometimes and so, I mean, if I get that, I mean, I'm not going to eat that meat, but yeah, I've walked up to where my stomach has just flipped like, no, when it came to food product. And it's done that way for stones. I've gotten stones before that I've gotten rid of because of the feeling and the vibe.
Yeah, I could see it with the stones. Yeah, I've just never
Yeah.
experienced that with food, obviously.
Really? And you're I guess I'm more of an animal empath because it was just I just, oh gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you are.
I've had that happen. It doesn't happen all the time, but there's times it's just like, oh gosh, no, I can't eat that. That's no. Now, back to the crystal healing and away from the buffet.
So I had a question. Now, would tumbling stones or crystals be better than the natural state of the crystal, or is the natural state better, more effective?
Well, you still have the stone. Did
Hmm.
you tumbling and polishing and cutting? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Um, you still have the actual stone, and the properties are still there for that stone. Because a lot of stones you're not going to find in its natural state,
Right.
because they're not going to take a yellow topaz, and they're not usually going to keep that in the rough,
Hmm.
which is what they use. That's the term for natural state. It would be a rough stone. Now people may have different beliefs on that, and that's fine. I feel the vibration of a stone that's been polished just as much as one that's rough. And not all stones are readily available rough.
Right. Okay.
Your most common is a cabochon cut, which is, it's not faceted. It doesn't have the little shiny facets that go around it.
Hmm.
And then you have your rough stones. Another thing you need to look for in this, is it a dyed stone? Because you have a stone called howlite, which is naturally a white stone with little like veins running through it.
Hmm.
So when it's dyed turquoise color, it looks like turquoise.
Oh.
And so people think it's turquoise when in actuality it's not, because of the dye process. And howlite is like chalk. You put chalk in a glass of dye solution and it goes all the way to the middle.
Hmm.
That's the same with howlite. So I've seen howlite dyed red and then turquoise color to make it look like a turquoise. So something like that, you're just going to get the properties of the howlite.
Yeah. So if you think you're buying turquoise and you're not sure of the seller, if
Mm-hmm.
they're
Yeah.
you have to do your research on the seller themselves whenever you buy something like that to make certain it is as advertised a true
Yes.
turquoise or.
And if it's advertised as a true turquoise and it's cheap,
Mhm.
it is either reconstituted, which is basically turquoise pieces glued together to be turquoise, or it's howlite, which has been dyed to look like turquoise.
Right.
So it's and to know where did this turquoise come from, because turquoise is readily available. You can found in the United States, in Mexico, and all over the world.
Hmm.
But it's how it's if you really want true turquoise, you need to get it from a source that is true.
Right. But if it's pieced together, it's still turquoise, right?
It is still turquoise, yes, if it's
Okay.
pieced together. Yeah. Now, that's where buying things online, you need to do your due diligence on researching the company you're buying them from, because I mean, I've seen people selling beads that are really for bead bracelets,
Hmm.
and they're priced very cheap. That's because they're probably glass,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
made to look like that stone, because there's a lot of, I'm not going to say which country usually does it, but where they're just selling it for cheap,
Yeah, exactly.
and not actually, using the stone. It's just glass made to look like that stone.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so that's why it's really important to kind of know where your stone comes from. Yeah, now you're not going to get a birth certificate for your stone and where it was mined and all that, but it's good to know what the properties are. And there's rock identifying apps that you can download on your phone too. I mean,
Right.
are they 100% accurate? Maybe not, but at least it's a second opinion,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
then yeah. So that's really important, because you need the stone that's going to work for you, but that stone's got to come from a good source, or be actually the stone it's supposed to be.
Right. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
We all like a sparkly to wear on our body, but placing crystals on your body in specific spots is one of the keys to crystal healing, because it can help balance your energy and tackle a specific issue. When you need to figure out what you need, like we talked about before, what do you want this? What kind of crystal healing are you wanting? Are you wanting less stress, more energy, better sleep? Different crystals have different vibes. So you like we spoke of earlier, the yellow citrine is supposed to give you that little well, you don't want that if you're trying to sleep.
True.
So so you want to pick the right crystal. Choose a crystal that matches your goal. Like the amethyst is going to chill you out. All right, that's the one you're going to want to help you sleep. You could place it on your body by laying down and getting comfortable, and you put the crystal on the area you want to focus on. So let's say you want some emotional healing. You'd get a rose quartz. And if you wanted, for the heart, for emotional healing of the heart, you want the rose quartz. Clear quartz on your forehead can help for concentration. Now, Carrie has trouble keeping the quartz on her forehead. I don't know what I do. But basically, you're going to put the rose quartz where your heart chakra is. And then you're going to, yes, here is meditation. You're going to close your eyes and breathe deeply and just let the crystal energy flow through you. And you're going to want to meditate for like 15 or 20 minutes or however long it feels like it. What feels good to you. But that's how you would use it for like placing it on your body. Now, there's some Reiki practices where they put the stones on you during the Reiki process. So it's kind of like there's so many different ways that you can use these crystals. You could wear your crystals, which I'm a firm believer in doing that. Just remember to cleanse them before you put them on. And I have a slab of selenite on the nightstand. So everything goes on there. And when I go to put something on, it's already been on the selenite. So it's already cleaned and charged and ready to go. But you could wear crystals as a necklace, bracelet, ring, any piece of jewelry that you like. Some people don't like necklaces, chains around their necks. It bothers them. A bracelet.
Right.
And so you got to figure out, though, again, what you want this to do for you. Like your black tourmaline bracelet can protect you from bad juju. While a moonstone necklace can boost your intuition. So it's kind of like, what do I want to work with here? Now, we talked about pendulums before, and that's a great way to get insight and guidance to help you choose a stone, where you could write down, let's see, you're drawn to 2 or 3. So you write it on a sheet of paper spaced apart and hold your pendulum above and ask the pendulum, which stone do you need? And let it do its thing.
Right.
And remember, if you're going to do a lot with your pendulum, yes and no questions only. Like,
Yeah.
Do I need rose quartz? If you don't want to do it, we're writing it down on a piece of paper. Do I need rose quartz? And let it answer yes or no. Just kind of, you could do it that way. It just depends on where your intuition is. If you're more successful with a pendulum, you trust that answers more from a pendulum. That's the way you want to go. It's very important when you're picking it out. We've talked about making crystal grids before, where you could set the intention, pick the stones you want. So let's say you want spiritual growth, then you would select amethyst in your grid. If you want love, you rose quartz, and then you just lay them in the pattern that you feel the grid should go. We've talked about that before with the grid, and then you activate the grid with a central stone like a clear quartz. And then you visualize your intention spreading through the grid.
Right. And there's different grids that you could use. Like when we talked about the sacred geometry grids, that's the grids that you would use. You could use like the Metatron cube, which that's kind of a big grid there. The flower of life, any kind of the sacred geometry grids you could use based on what it is that you want to work on or have cleared or bring to you, whatever the case may be. But then there's also grids for just strictly the body layout itself, like working on your chakras. So you would do like a linear line. That would just be the line, one in each of the chakras that helps bring positive energy in whatever chakra it is you're wanting to work on, like you said, individually, or you could work on all of them. You could use a star pattern, and that's where you arrange the crystals around the body in a star shape, and that creates a protective and energetic shell around you. So there's different layouts that you can do
Yes.
besides
Yes.
the grid. Yeah.
In setting your grid, if you wanted to do chakra balancing, obviously the amethyst and clear quartz is your go-to. But if you're also wanting to do looking for abundance, with citrine and green aventurine are great stones to put on your grid for that. Love would be obvious rose quartz and rhodonite, and grounding hematite and black tourmaline. So that's just a few. There's so many out there. That's why we were trying not to do a deep dive into the stones, because you could never get them all.
Yeah, true. Well,
Yeah.
and because there's so many different reasons out there that you could use a grid or need a grid or
Hmm.
placement. So we couldn't cover all that. Anyway, just the general is all we can really provide on that.
Yeah. Now, this is one I have done. I don't know if you've ever done this, Kim, but you can add crystals to your bath.
No, I can't do
You're like,
baths. I can't do
oh,
baths. So
okay. So don't do it.
so no, I've never done that.
Well, for those of us who can soak in the tub, that's relaxing. And so if you add, some crystals and water, I mean, water and crystals go hand in hand for most stones, not all stones. So if it ends in ite, don't put it in the bathtub.
Right, because it will dissolve.
Okay. Yes. I mean, we're talking stones like your quartz, amethyst, rose quartz. So those are safe for the water. You want to rinse your stone under running water before you put them in the tub to get rid of any bad vibes, bad energy.
Now,
You want to set your
now for that, do you rinse them in the sink as your bath water's
yeah.
running, or do
Well, yeah.
you?
You no, you don't want to rinse them in the water you're going to sit in.
Well, that's, wanted that clarification. Or do
Well,
you
no,
rinse it
I
in the
mean,
tub before you start holding the water?
I would rinse it in the sink
Okay.
while your bathtub's filling with water.
Okay, just asking.
Okay, back to this. Uh, after you've washed your stones in the sink, you want to set your intentions by holding your crystals and think about what you want to get out of the bath. Have you been really stressed and you just want some relaxation? Do you feel like you need some emotional healing or cleansing, spiritual cleansing? We've talked about psychic baths. Perfect idea is to put some stones, crystals in there with you. You can also add Epsom salt because that's giving nourishment to your body, and essential oil is always nice. I've done this. I've done the essential oil with my stones. Clear quartz could help boost your energy and clarity in the bath. Amethyst, calming, spiritual growth. Rose quartz, emotional healing and love. Any questions about that?
No. Mm-mm.
So, okay. Well, by doing this, you can help bring healing power of the crystals into your everyday life. Just whether you're doing a grid, wearing the jewelry, or doing a spiritual bath. If you want something crystal-wise to help you sleep at night, and I keep a lepidolite next to my bed, usually, and I put those in the window too. But amethyst under the pillow could help with just making you calmer. Don't put lepidolite under your pillow because it's a fragile stone that
Mm.
you keep on the nightstand, and that's just to help relieve stress.
Hmm. I may have to look for some of that.
Well, that necklace that you wear that I made for your daughter,
Yeah.
that's what that stone is.
Ah, yeah, but that's going to be going with my daughter. So
So you're saying for your birthday,
no,
okay?
no, I'm not. I need to look for that.
Her daughter's moving out.
Yeah,
That's where it's going.
exactly.
Okay, so if you wanted crystal for like a laser focus, you need to be focused. You got to clear your mind. At work or something, you're under stress. You need to be on the top of the game. Fluorite is a focus enhancer. Hematite is a mind clearer. I personally have a big old chunk of smoky quartz on my desk.
Hmm.
That's to keep the bad energy away. If you wanted a Zen mode, blue lace agate or rose quartz would be nice to have. So those things you could have things like that in your bedroom, because that's going to give calming peace. The lace agate is really good to use during meditation. But the key thing is to trust your gut when you're picking out what your healing stone, because not everybody needs the same stone.
Right.
You want to make sure that, we talked about researching, making sure that that's the stone that you need. how to pick it out. We've gone over how to do that, how to get the energy from it. If you get I've walked into rock shops before and I've had to turn and walk right back out. It wasn't that there was so much energy that it was overwhelming. It was so much energy that was not welcoming. I went into one and I'm like, okay, I really want to check the store out. People keep talking about it, but I was having difficulty. My that gut was saying, nope. And so I went in, even though I had the intents to flee, and I found out what the problem was. There were alligator legs, alligator claws, alligator heads, and that was the problem for me.
Well, that's interesting.
I couldn't focus on anything in the store, and because I want to see what the heck. It's a rock shop. It should be happy. It should have happy vibes. What's going on here? And when I got to that, I was like, okay. And I've never been back. I didn't buy anything. I didn't touch anything. I definitely didn't touch anything.
So what was the purpose of those being there? Were they for sale or something?
Yeah, they were for sale.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Which in the mountains I don't think would be that popular. But I could see maybe if you were, Louisiana and Florida, who have alligators and crocodiles and stuff. But yeah. So, get the vibe of the shop. And another thing, meaning vibe of the shop, is if you walk in and you kind of get that feeling of, oh, I don't want to be in here. It could be that the intention of that particular shop isn't aligned with your intentions.
Or your beliefs.
Yes. A friend of mine and I went into Asheville it was a new rock shop, and she'd been wanting to go, so we went, and there's one woman there. If I got anywhere close to her, she worked there, she would move to the other side of the store. And it got to be funny because, I'm wanting to look all over the store. I'm here, I want to see everything, because it's not like Asheville's around the corner from where I live. So we were going to take advantage of the whole. And I probably chased her all around that store, which at one point I was doing on purpose because it was amusing.
Right, of
just
course.
Like once I realized, like, yeah, but the another person had to be the one to help us, because she couldn't take my energy. I wasn't getting anything off her, like a conflict energy or anything. She just couldn't handle my vibration.
Because yours was higher than hers, probably, yeah.
Probably, because I think if hers was higher than mine, I would have felt it.
Yeah.
But so keep in mind when you walk into a store, there's that type of energy you're going to encounter as well. So you may, if you walk in and you're getting, they're not wanting to help you. It might not be anything against you. It might just be that it's them.
That makes sense. Yeah. Could be any reason then as to why you can't really go in there.
Yes. But, so if you do get that overwhelming, I don't want to go in there, then go find another shop.
Yeah. Try it twice.
Because yeah. And at that point, yeah. And it just could be the one person working that day.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It could just be that who's ever manning the store that day, not the actual things in the store.
Right. So, and also pay attention when you're in there, like the pendulums that happened at the table. If you walk by something and it falls off the shelf, take a look at that stone. I'm talking about stuff that's packaged.
Yes.
That's been known to happen.
Yeah.
Not the actual rock falling off but lightweight things have been known to, fall and trying to get your attention.
Yeah, I've had that happen before.
Yeah, so there's different ways of doing this. And if this is something that you really feel that you'd like to learn more about and check out the courses that are available, find out. But if you're going to want to use this as opening up your own therapy place for crystals, you do need to check with local ordinances to see, like some places want you to have some sort of degree
right.
to do things. So, but if you're just going to psychic events and paranormal events, you may not have to have that kind of backing. I don't know.
Yeah. What I found as far as the classes and whatnot, getting certified is fine, but what really helps your credibility yourself is making certain it's an accredited group or accredited school that because by having something that's accredited that gives more validation and worth. I guess worth is kind of a
We also don't know what you're talking about.
it shows that you know what you're talking about because you've
Yeah.
gotten your certification from an accredited facility or course. But yeah, I went to Udemy and there were courses on it in Udemy that we've talked about before. And
Yeah. Yeah.
having a mentor or a certified practitioner themselves also be there with you for the first couple of times to make certain that you are not causing harm in a practice, because you don't want to cause harm to anybody. You want to make certain it's all ethical and proper for what you're doing because that's the goal it could be a goal of yours to become a certified crystal healer. Maybe you don't want to go the full Reiki path, but you're drawn to the crystal healing on yourself and you want to share that with others and help others with that type of healing practice, then yeah, definitely get certified. Make certain that the courses that you do take, you do receive some kind of certification because it puts validity to your practice.
Yes. And remember that, through this healing process, this healing series that we're doing, none of this is to replace professional medical advice. Okay.
Or psychological advice or anything like that. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So do keep that in mind. It doesn't hurt to get that extra boost and help. Cause I mean, I, I, I pick my crystals for what, like getting ready in the morning. I have my two, go-tos, but there's times I'm like, I need you today. Okay, I have to
Hmm.
put you on. I need you today. Or I'll be trying to put the necklace on and I can't get the clasp to hook. And so I'm like, okay, I'm not supposed to wear you. And then I'll put another one on and it goes right on.
Hmm.
So, you do have those type of situations where you need to listen to your intuition, on what you're supposed to, wear today. What do I need? You know, it's not uncommon that I have more than one stone going on. I mean, my psychic protection necklace that has three stones, and you can only see two of them
Hmm.
because the shungite's in the back because I wanted that to touch my skin.
Right.
I felt better with it there.
Right. And just like I use the crystal pouch that I take into places where I've not been before or where I feel like I need to take it because something is telling me you're going to need this extra anxiety help. You're
Yes.
you're going to become going into a situation where you need to be protected or whatever. I just listen to whether I need to really have it in my purse or on my person. And whenever I have it on my person, then I can open it up a little bit and I just feel each one that's in there, and focus on that. And then it helps me. So just sometimes just carrying that pouch in my purse is enough. But if I were to have a serious anxiety attack, I would seek medical assistance or psychological assistance or whatever it is that I would need at that time. But sometimes you just need that little extra protection or whatever.
And I always recommend a worry stone, and I sell a lot of them. Sometimes I wrap them. You could wear as a pendant, and then you still have access to rub the middle of that worry stone.
Right.
But those are good to keep in your pocket.
Yeah.
So when you start to feel you could pull it out, and you can just rub on it, and that brings your mind back to focus.
Mm-hmm.
The key thing here is after you use the stone, you want to cleanse it. With selenite's a big thing for me, but you can also use sunlight, and you can also recharge all your stones under the full moon.
Right. Right. Now, sunlight is more frequently than the full moon, of course, but
Full moon, yeah, yeah, and it's easier with sunlight because you don't have to gather up. If you're like me, that's a lot to gather up to get to the moon. I don't put them outside anymore though because after
yeah.
the raccoons stole some, I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
They go in the windowsill. But I mean, so it's real important that you cleanse your stones when you're done, or cleanse them before you start. Or if you're like Carrie, you cleanse them coming and going.
Yeah, right.
In simple cleansing. And you can also use sage to cleanse your stones,
Mm-hmm.
or your incense to do it as well. So if you don't have selenite, you could use this burn some sage and the smoke, run it through the smoke, Palo Santo or incense, whatever you prefer.
Right.
You could do any of those things.
Yeah, and if you are having a client come for your crystal healing as well, you're already going to be doing that anyway. You're going to be cleansing the space where you would be for that before they come in and such. So, to have different things on hand for the situation is always good. Multiple things, like you said, the selenite, the sage, the Palo Santo, all of that you would want to have on hand for an actual session as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are incense or, smudging sprays. But again, you couldn't use it on a stone that ended with ite.
Yeah.
It's like the selenite,
Yeah.
calcite, But like at work, I can't light up my sage stick, because it's a business,
Right.
and we don't want the fire alarms to go off,
Exactly.
or people are sensitive to smells, and sage is one of those that, is very pungent.
Mm-hmm.
I like the smell of sage, but not everybody does, so that's where you can, if you're needing to cleanse your workspace, for what stones you have there for your little protective area, you either have selenite or the smudge spray. I smudge my cubicle quite frequently, just because it is for my spiritual health.
Yeah.
Because I'm getting away all the bad. I've even salted my cubicle, which that caused quite an interest at work. Like, why is there salt all over here? Don't worry about it. Just carry on.
Carry on.
I've been there long enough. They're just like, oh, it's I think she's doing a woo woo thing. I don't know. Let's leave her alone. But it's that I need to have my space and my stones cleansed for that vibration to work for me at work. And I got to tell you, the people I work with are pretty. Most of them are amazing. But for my birthday, they bought all these gemstones. My desk was cut. I had rocks everywhere.
Aw.
They were on my computer. They were on the keyboards. They were all over the desk. So it was just like, so I had a lot of energy going on there, and it was, I couldn't cleanse all of them.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, but it was, it was nice. But so I got a lot of energy going on in my cubicle.
And one thing there, since you said it somewhere on your computer, try not to have crystals on or near your electronics, because they could cause issues with those devices. So,
Now I keep a big slab of selenite. I used to keep it. So this is really funny, listeners. Kim just gave a warning on don't put electronics or put your stones too close to your electronics. And I was starting to say, well, I've got this big selenite in front of the TV, and we lost connection.
we did. I lost connection.
So, and I mean, my podcast studio is also my jewelry making studio. I've got gemstones everywhere, girl. I don't know what to tell you.
Okay.
So I'll try not to have them right on my computer, but I use selenite around. Now it's not laying on the electronics, but I use selenite as a buffer of energy.
That's fine. It's just don't put big ones on there and stuff, because it could cause problems with the electronics, as we just witnessed. Somehow that happened, so I don't know.
Just talking about it did it.
I guess.
It's like, okay. Well, is there anything else you wanted to add to crystal healing?
I think that's all I have on it, Carrie.
Okay. Well, thank you, listeners, for tuning in to the PsychicBent episode, and hopefully we don't get disconnected in any other episodes, but it happens.
It happens.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, listeners. Bye.
Bye. May your light shine bright.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast, Psychic Bent. If you enjoyed Psychic Bent, please like, follow, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. We can be reached on Facebook at PsychicBent Podcast. Our email address is psychicbent1@gmail.com. May your light shine bright.